Boudicca, the British queen who set Rome on fire. The smoke rose over Londinium in the summer of AD 60 like a dark storm that refused to move. Roman merchants ran through narrow streets carrying children, coins, and whatever pieces of life they could still hold in their hands. Behind them came the sound of horns from the east. Not Roman horns. British horns. At the center of the advancing army rode a tall woman beneath a sky the color of iron. Ancient writers later claimed that her hair fell below her waist and that her voice shook the ground beneath her soldiers. Around her marched thousands from tribes that had hated each other for generations, yet now carried the same hunger for revenge. By nightfall, one of Rome's newest cities had become a furnace. Temples collapsed. Statues cracked in the heat. The empire that called itself eternal suddenly looked fragile at the edge of the known world. And somewhere beyond the flames, Roman commanders faced a question that should never have existed at all. How had one woman pushed the greatest empire on earth to the edge of disaster? Most people remembered Boudicca as a wild warrior queen who led a desperate rebellion against Rome and died in defeat. In the popular story, she appeared suddenly from the forests of Britain, burned a few cities, and vanished into history like a tragic legend. But that version missed the most important part of her story. Boudicca did not fight Rome because she hated civilization. In fact, her own kingdom had once worked with the empire. Nor was her rebellion simply an emotional act of revenge. It became one of the most dangerous crises Rome faced during the first century of its expansion. The deeper story revealed something far more unsettling. It revealed how Roman greed helped create the very enemy Rome feared. It revealed that many Britons who joined Boudicca had once accepted Roman rule willingly. And it revealed that the destruction she unleashed nearly changed the future of Britain forever. The question was not whether Boudicca lost. The real question was why Rome almost lost first. Long before Roman roads cut across Britain, the island stood divided between many tribal kingdoms. Some fought each other for land. Others traded across the sea with Gaul and the wider world. Power shifted constantly, like sand beneath water. Life in Iron Age Britain could be brutal. Winters killed the weak. Raids destroyed villages overnight. Wealth rested not in coins but in cattle, weapons, and loyal warriors. Yet Britain was not the primitive wilderness many later imagined. Some tribes minted coins. Others built large settlements protected by earth walls and timber gates. Trade reached surprisingly far. Wine from southern Europe sometimes appeared at the tables of British chiefs hundreds of miles from Rome itself. Then came Emperor Claudius in AD 43. Rome invaded Britain with disciplined legions, heavy cavalry, and engineers who could build roads faster than many tribes could gather an army. Some kingdoms resisted immediately. Others made treaties. Rome understood that conquest often worked best through local allies. Among those allies stood the Iceni tribe in eastern Britain. Their king, Prasutagus, kept his throne by cooperating with Rome. It was a careful balance. Rome allowed certain rulers to remain in power as long as they obeyed imperial authority and paid tribute. The arrangement looked peaceful from a distance. In truth, it rested on fear. Boudicca entered history through that fragile compromise. Almost nothing survived about her early life, yet even Roman historians admitted she possessed unusual authority. This mattered more than many listeners might expect. Several British tribes allowed women to hold significant political influence, something that shocked many Romans, whose society remained deeply patriarchal. Rome considered Britain conquered. Britain did not always agree. The tension grew slowly at first. Roman veterans demanded land. Officials collected taxes with increasing aggression. Moneylenders attached to the empire pushed local rulers into debt. One Roman writer later admitted that imperial agents behaved as though they had conquered enemies. Then came the event that changed everything. When King Prasutagus died, he attempted a compromise. He left part of his kingdom to Rome and part to his own family, hoping to protect his wife and daughters after his death. Roman law ignored the arrangement completely. Instead, imperial officials seized Iceni property. Noble families lost their lands. Debts were called in immediately. And according to the Roman historian Tacitus, Boudicca herself was publicly whipped while her daughters were assaulted by Roman soldiers. It was more than cruelty. It was humiliation designed to demonstrate power. Rome believed terror would secure obedience. Instead, it created rebellion. At first, Boudicca faced impossible odds. Rome controlled trained legions with years of battlefield experience. The Iceni alone could never defeat them. Yet in moments of extreme pressure, history sometimes moved faster than empires could react. Boudicca's first test came in silence. She had to unite tribes that deeply distrusted one another. Ancient Britain was full of rivalries older than memory itself. Yet she transformed private anger into collective fury. Tribe after tribe joined her cause. Some came for revenge. Others came because Rome's taxes and seizures had already poisoned daily life. The rebellion spread before Roman authorities understood its scale. Then came the obstacle that defined her rise, Roman military discipline itself. Roman soldiers trained constantly. They marched in formation, built defensive camps every night, and obeyed commands with terrifying precision. Against them stood a coalition of warriors with different leaders, different weapons, and different customs. How could such a force possibly survive against the machine that had conquered half the known world? The answer lay in timing. At the moment rebellion exploded, the Roman governor Suetonius Paulinus campaigned far away in western Britain. Much of Rome's military strength stood with him. Boudicca struck before the empire could regroup. Her first target was Camulodunum, modern Colchester, a Roman settlement built as a symbol of imperial dominance. The city contained a massive temple dedicated to Emperor Claudius, paid for partly by local taxes. To many Britons, it represented occupation carved into stone. The attack came with terrifying speed. Roman defenders begged for reinforcements, but help arrived too late. The city fell. Survivors later described streets filled with fire and screams. Then the rebellion moved south. Londinium at that time remained young, crowded, and vulnerable. Governor Suetonius briefly considered defending it but abandoned the city after judging the position hopeless. Thousands fled. Thousands more stayed behind, trusting Rome to protect them. Rome could not. Tacitus later wrote that nearly 70,000 people died during the destruction of Londinium and nearby settlements. Ancient numbers often exaggerated events, yet even careful estimates suggested enormous devastation. And still Boudicca advanced. For a brief moment, the impossible seemed real. Roman authority in Britain appeared close to collapse. Some imperial officials reportedly considered abandoning the province entirely. Then came the turning point. Suetonius gathered roughly 10,000 soldiers along a narrow battlefield somewhere in the Midlands. The exact location vanished into history, but the shape of the moment remained clear. Roman discipline stood against overwhelming numbers. Before the battle, Boudicca reportedly addressed her warriors from a chariot with her daughters beside her. One Roman account claimed she declared, "I am not fighting for my kingdom and wealth. I am fighting as an ordinary person for lost freedom." Whether the words survived accurately hardly mattered now. The deeper truth remained visible. She understood the rebellion had become larger than herself. Yet emotion alone could not defeat Roman tactics. At the height of her power, Boudicca commanded perhaps one of the largest anti-Roman uprisings the empire had yet faced. 3 major cities burned. Entire regions fell into chaos. Roman citizens across Britain lived in fear of annihilation. No British leader before her had shaken imperial rule so completely. But greatness carried a terrible cost. The rebellion moved with fury rather than strategy. Rebel forces destroyed Roman settlements yet struggled to build lasting supply systems or coordinated command structures. Some warriors reportedly brought families and wagons onto the battlefield, expecting total victory before the final battle even began. That decision proved catastrophic. Suetonius chose his ground carefully. Narrow terrain prevented the Britons from surrounding Roman lines. Legionaries waited behind shields while rebel forces charged downhill in massive waves. Then the Romans advanced methodically, driving wedges into the crowded attackers. The slaughter became enormous. Ancient writers claimed that British wagons blocked escape routes behind the army. Panic spread. What had looked like an unstoppable uprising collapsed into chaos within hours. And somewhere inside that disaster stood Boudicca herself, watching the dream of liberation die in front of her. History rarely remembered the silence after great defeats. It remembered flames. It remembered speeches. It remembered heroic last stands. But afterward came the bodies. The smoke. The unbearable understanding that nothing could be restored to the world that existed before. Roman accounts disagreed about Boudicca's end. Some claimed she took poison to avoid capture. Others suggested illness carried her away soon after the defeat. No confirmed grave was ever found. One of the most feared enemies Rome faced simply disappeared into uncertainty. Yet her death solved only part of Rome's problem. The rebellion exposed deep weaknesses inside imperial rule. Roman authorities quietly changed policy afterward. Excessive brutality by officials decreased for a time. Financial exploitation softened. Rome understood that greed had nearly destroyed the province more effectively than any foreign army could. The irony was impossible to ignore. Boudicca failed militarily, yet forced the empire to govern differently. In the end, the answer to the central question became painfully clear. Rome almost lost because it mistook fear for loyalty. It believed conquered people would endure humiliation forever. Boudicca proved otherwise. And the image from Londinium remained. Smoke above the city. Fire against the night sky. An empire discovering, too late, that power alone did not guarantee obedience. Without Boudicca's rebellion, Roman Britain might have evolved differently. The empire may have expanded faster into the north and west. Imperial officials might have ruled with even greater brutality had the uprising not exposed the danger of unchecked exploitation. Her influence survived in stranger ways as well. Centuries later, Boudicca became a symbol of resistance, yet that image often simplified her into myth. Popular culture transformed her into either a savage destroyer or a flawless national heroine. Neither version fully matched reality. The truth was more complicated and far more human. She had once lived within Rome's system before turning against it. Her rebellion included horrifying violence alongside undeniable courage. And although she lost the war itself, she permanently entered the psychological history of empire. Roman writers never forgot the terror she caused. Few provincial rebellions during the 1st century threatened Roman authority so dramatically. History also misunderstood ancient Britain through her story. For generations, many assumed Celtic societies excluded women from serious political power. Yet Boudicca's leadership forced even hostile Roman historians to acknowledge otherwise. That alone changed how later generations understood the ancient world. Very few individuals ever forced an empire to reconsider how it governed. Fewer still achieved it while standing at the edge of total defeat. Boudicca did both. And that was why her story endured long after the ashes of Roman Britain disappeared into the soil beneath modern roads and cities. One question still divided historians after nearly 2,000 years. Did Boudicca destroy her only chance of freedom by choosing total war against Rome, or was rebellion the only possible answer after Rome's humiliation of her family and people? Perhaps the most unsettling truth was this: Rome remembered many conquered kings. But one of the names it feared most belonged to a woman it never truly defeated in memory. And if this journey through the fires of Roman Britain revealed how fragile even great empires could become, then subscribe for more stories where forgotten figures changed the course of history long before the modern world began.